Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're reviewing the novel Cypher, Lord of the Fallen by author John French. As always with reviews, it will be spoiler free, followed by spoiler talk at the end for those who have already read the book. The main talking points that stood out for me. And as usual, let's begin by checking out the synopsis off the back of the book. As the Great Rift unfolds in the night sky above Terra, and demons walk upon the birth world of mankind, the Primarch Rabute Guilliman returns, heralding a dark new age. Cypher and his band of Fallen escape from the most secure prison in the Imperium. Now loose in the Imperial Palace, they are hunted by warriors of the Dark Angels, forces of the Adeptus Custodes, and Imperial assassins. But what are Cypher's intentions? Can anything or anyone be trusted? Told from Cypher's own unreliable point of view, this tale of truth, lies and secrets sees one of the Imperium's most mysterious figures make war at its very heart. But what are the true motivations of the Lord of the Fallen? Okay, so this one is one I've been waiting to read for a long time. It feels like the limited edition version came out absolutely ages ago now. However, finally the standard release is here, and I managed to dive into it over the past couple of days. And just for reference, I read the old school book version, not the audio. Now, as the synopsis states, this book is an immediate follow-on and set in the days at the end of Guilliman's Terran Crusade. As a refresher, during Guilliman's return, he set course for Terra from Macragge, traversing the warp storms across the galaxy, and at one point becoming imprisoned within a Blackstone fortress by the forces of chaos. Here, it was the mysterious Cypher who helped Guilliman and his men escape, in return for an audience with the Emperor of Mankind. Guilliman instead betrayed Cypher, handing him over to the Custodes upon reaching Terra. And that's where the story picks up. It's the perfect event to cover in a novel, with long known Cypher had or would escape, as he always inevitably does. However, considering it's Terra itself, this was one we really had to see for ourselves. Now, yes, obviously Cypher is the main protagonist of this story, and it's pretty much told from his point of view the entire time, even with other side characters, with Cypher acting as the narrator of sorts. As a character within the setting whose entire makeup is based around mystery and being an enigma, I don't think you'll be too surprised to hear that's exactly what you get here. Despite this being a Cypher story, despite him narrating to you, and at times glimpsing some true emotion, I don't think you'll come out the other side of this one with any further understanding of who the man truly is, or just what his real motivations actually are. The premise of Cypher's character is to be a mystery, and so with that there's only so far you can really glimpse behind the curtain. The author John French does a good job with that here, letting you spend a great deal of time with the man, yet not actually disclosing too much information at all. You see and learn of the events that transpired, yet the reasons behind it remain very much open to interpretation, as it should. A lot of the introspection and monologuing of Cypher is speaking in riddles, asking more questions than providing answers, placing that responsibility in the reader's hands. And again, it was a good way to go about it, even if it can be frustrating at times, just wanting to know the truth. For all that said, however, Maybe the biggest revelation and highlight into Cypher's character here is his relationship with his fellow Fallen, the motley band of knights who are accompanying him on this adventure. Much like we saw within the recent Son of the Forest novel, there's a myriad of different relationships amongst the Fallen. You have knights who have truly fallen to chaos, those who lament and despise their former Primarch, those who equally despise Luthor, and even some who wish for redemption by the Emperor. Here, you get to see how Cypher views these different characters of the Fallen, and more importantly why he still classes each of them as a brother, being surprisingly at times attached to his one-time Legion kin. It's a nice piece of development to the Cypher character, giving him a little more depth, yet not affecting that enigma aspect at all. The Fallen Warband are a nice assortment of characters, and while they are very much supporting roles to Cypher's journey, they fill the role nicely and are quite a memorable group as well. There are what I would class as two main side characters however, a custodian by the name of Hekaron, who is a warden of the Shadow Keepers, the guards of the dark cells beneath the palace, and a Dark Angel librarian by the name of Mordecai. Now this could be pronounced differently again, I had the book version, not the audio. Now I loved both of these characters, probably even more than Cypher himself if I'm honest. Anytime you get a glimpse of a custodian within the palace, let alone the dark cells beneath, you feel like you're treading on hallowed ground, somehow witnessing events that few are privileged to see. And Hekaron's story is full of that for me. He feels every inch as a custodian should. His character absolutely on point. He's lethal, a badass, yet it's all contained within that impassive, emotionally detached shell. I'd probably say he was my favourite character, and through him you get to see some of the inner workings of the palace you would never have seen before. Mordecai in turn is your prototypical Dark Angel, absolute on his convictions and prepared to do whatever he must to get there. Having him as a librarian was a fantastic decision by the author, as this extra dynamic adds a great extra level to Mordecai's character, even with something so simple as being a psyker on Terra, feeling the Emperor's power just absolutely overwhelming everything, the constant control needed to block these things out. And when Mordecai uses his powers to effect, man are there some great moments. From absolute scene-stealing feats to small little practical things. Things that absolutely make sense for a librarian to do. He's probably one of the best librarian characters I've read in recent memory. And maybe the setting helps with that too, because this is nothing short of a rip-roaring adventure chase. You've got Cypher attempting to achieve his goals, with Hekaron and Mordecai each in pursuit, with their own objectives. It's a great read, and it kind of has those fugitive thriller elements about it, that the chase is on, and it's got to be done before Cypher's gone forever, or in turn, accomplishes his unknown desires. When you've got a story that's operating against the time limit, it adds that sense of drama to it, and it really works in Cypher Lord of the Fallen here. You feel the tension in the back of your mind the whole time. I genuinely found myself wanting to just keep turning the page to see where it was going to go next. And in a rarity for a story, I was equally enjoying those alternate points of view as well, if not more so like I said. Now, as for cons, I have to be a little vague here to avoid spoilers, but I'd say it all felt a little implausible. More of a what-if story. The story goes to great lengths to explain the chaos of the world above, the war ongoing upon the surface of Terra, yet still within the palace itself, from Cypher's escape to the events thereafter. I definitely found it hard to believe how easily Cypher could get around, and how he could achieve the things he needed to also. And there were definite moments where I felt Cypher's plot armor, so to speak, that he was ahead of the game a little too often, and he just always had the answers, when I felt he probably shouldn't. There was also times it felt more Alpha Legion-esque than anything else, with the riddles of is this a lie or is this the truth? Yes, secrets are nothing new to the Dark Angels, but it definitely veered into Alpha Legion territory. However, for cons, that's really about it. Yes, it felt implausible, but I found myself thoroughly enjoying the adventure regardless. The entire chase. It doesn't mess around and jumps into the heat of the action right away, and from there it never lets up. This was the most excited I've been to turn the page since sitting down to read The Lion's Return in Son of the Forest. I really did enjoy it that much. If Cypher just felt a little more pushed to his limit, in genuine jeopardy, I'd probably be giving this a 5 out of 5 blessed by the Emperor. It really was that enjoyable. But as much as I loved it, it never quite got there. And again, it just felt like Cypher had too many answers. So score-wise, I'd give this a 4 out of 5. An absolutely great read and one I definitely recommend. No, you're not going to get all the answers here to the Cypher mystery, but honestly, you were never going to. The mystery is integral to his character. However, that's it for the spoiler-free review. Now some spoiler talk on the main talking points for me, for those that have already read the book. Okay, so the one thing I certainly didn't expect to see in this one was Dark Angels pursuing Cypher within the depths of the palace. And honestly, it certainly made me change the way I view the Dark Angels somewhat. Admittedly, kind of crazy, right? We've seen them betray allies, slaughter innocents to hide their shame, but daring to infiltrate the Imperial Palace? Oh, that's a step too far for Rho. I really should have been an Inquisitor. But again, as I said in the review, watching Mordecai's absolute dedication to keeping the Dark Angel secret, the capture of Cypher, the lengths he was willing to go to, I really enjoyed it. Yet I couldn't believe just what I was watching them do. Firing upon the palace, daring to execute its servants in their quest. Honestly, how the Lion would react to that is crazy to think about. The more we've seen of the chapter over the years, the more and more they're sliding into villain territory. I think the Lion's return has come just at the right time. Any further and the Dark Angels would surely have been exposed. But Mordecai and the Dark Angels' involvement was absolutely a part of that hard-to-believe feeling that I had whilst reading this story. It went to great lengths to show them covering their tracks, the situation of how and why they could do what they were doing, why they would get away with it. But I just couldn't escape the fact that no one would ever detect their involvement. I really think something has to come from this later. Something revealed to Guilliman, or even a question put to the Lion. What were the Dark Angels doing beneath the palace during the battle for Lion's Gate? It's too good an element of intrigue to turn down, surely. And it'd be a great way to add that extra element of doubt to the Dark Angels. Especially now Lion L. Johnson is back. You could even have Trajan Valoris becoming aware of it himself. That would be a fascinating element. And I hadn't even thought of the Cypher factor when it came to the brothers' upcoming reunion. But surely Gilliman's got to bring up the events of the Terran Crusade and Cypher to L. Johnson when he sees his brother's redeemed knights. Can you imagine if he knows of the Dark Angel's actions infiltrating the palace as well? Oh boy, what a great element that's going to be in their future discussions. I guess the main topic of conversation for today should be the vision of Hekarans upon the cusp of death. Was it the Emperor speaking to his custodies, or something else, being brought back to life to give a message to Cypher of not yet? I think the logical answer is it was the Emperor, because nothing else really makes sense to me. Even in the aftermath of Cadia's fall, a herald of a chaos god within the inner sanctum itself is hard to envisage. Which then takes you to the conclusion Cypher's working for the Emperor, which makes even less sense to me. If the Emperor wanted someone to kill him, then there are far easier ways he could do it, none of which involve Cypher. He could just possess a custodian or assassin already on Terra, who each themselves would find it much easier to enter the inner sanctum than Cypher. Ultimately, it's left as a mystery at this point still anyway. Logic would assume it was the Emperor speaking to Hekaron, though admittedly there was none of the usual signs of it being him. No reference to him with the capital H. No golden power or presence. No real references to him at all. And to me, it didn't really feel like the Emperor as it usually does. Just all leaving it open to interpretation by the words and conversation. Honestly, I hope it wasn't the Emperor, but I just can't see it being anyone else. I will say I also really enjoyed the introduction of the assassins. I thought that was fantastically done, highlighting the relationship between the Custodes and the assassins, two age-old factions since the Imperium's foundation, and having Kratos suit up to hunt Cypher, a future Grand Master of the Assassinorum. Oh man, I thought that was going to be epic. I didn't know how it was going to be handled, because there was no way Cypher could come out of that one-on-one, and survive. And yeah, the assassins got taken out straight away. Cypher had the jump on them the whole time. That one was the biggest disappointment of the story for me, and definitely the time I felt Cypher's plot armor shining through the strongest. I personally think a good development would have been for Cypher to be a pawn of Tzeentch, and it would be a good way to explain his constant being ahead of the game, seemingly knowing the future. Because getting the jump on two assassins, one an outright legend in his art, and a future Grand Master of the Order, that needs some more explanation for me. But again, still, I just really enjoyed the story overall anyway. I didn't take it too seriously, and just enjoyed the ride. And that's what it was, a good adventure. It works as a perfect self-contained story, something that explains Cypher's escape, gave a little tease of the future, but in reality hasn't really changed anything. There's not much else it could do. Again, you explain too much of Cypher's character, and you lose what makes him, him. That element of mystery. But overall, everyone, what did you think? Did you enjoy Cypher as much as me? Were you hoping to get more answers? Or maybe were you expecting to see something different? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.